Okay. Thank y'all for being patient, waiting outside. I'll just call our Education and Appropriations Subcommittee to order, and I appreciate the members being here, and I appreciate all of you out there. I know we're going to take public comment a little bit later. We're going to have Department of Education go over their budget, and then we'll open it up for some comment. And if we run out of time or need to, we might go a little later, or we would definitely maybe be scheduling some more hearings next week. I don't anticipate tomorrow, but hopefully we can get through this today. So, Vice Chairman Glanton, would you open us up with a prayer?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Would you pray with us? Most heavenly and gracious God, we just thank you, first of all, for being the great I am. We thank you for giving us an opportunity once again to come together in this great state, oh Father, to do the business of the people of Georgia. Father, we pray for extra special wisdom and knowledge as we go about the business of the budget. We ask that you would open our eyes, that we might see beyond ourselves and our own motivations to do what is best and right for those we serve. We ask for your blessings over the leadership of this committee, as well as the members of this committee. We ask these in all things in the mighty and unmatched name of Jesus the Christ, and those who believe said, amen.
Thank you. We'll call on DO, Department of Education, and our charge to our committee here is just we want to make sure, Chairman England, that our committee understands the scope and the details of this budget, and so this is a time that we can take to dig in and to understand. Our budget probably has less changes and cuts than some of the other budgets. Then again, we want to take time to make sure we understand the scope of what's going on. So I'll turn it over to you if you introduce yourself.
I'm the interim CFO. For Mr. Beck. I'm here to do the presentation for the Department of Education.
Okay. The mic's yours.
All right, thank you. Well, first off, thank you, Chairman Dickey and members of the committee, for the opportunity to present the governor's recommendation for the department's fiscal year 21 budget. Foremost, we are extremely appreciative of the governor and the legislature's continued consideration of the QBE formula and K-12 funding. The budget instructions and the governor's recommendations exempted the formula and its core components from reductions, and we know that our districts are very grateful for this. In addition, we are excited to see the governor's recommendation includes continued investments beyond formula growth through an additional increase to teacher salaries. In looking at our budget, there are essentially two areas of funding. There's the funding associated with QBE formula and other pass-through grants to our districts, and then there's the department's operational budget. Our original fiscal year 21 budget submission included 6% reductions to the department's operating budget and included any grants not specifically exempted in the governor's recommendations, or instructions, I'm sorry. The governor's recommendations ended up leaving most of the non-exempted grants intact, which again, we appreciate and know that our districts feel the same. That said, in order to balance the budget, leaving those grants alone appears to have pushed up some of the programmatic reductions we have been planning for. In all, the governor's recommendations include about 6.5% reduction in fiscal year 21. Our department budget reduction strategies went into place back in the fall once we began planning for these cuts. You'll see language in the governor's budget book that refers to vacant positions, travel costs, computer purchases, subscriptions, and so forth. Rather than go through the programs one by one, I'll try to summarize the bigger parts of our strategy. We implemented a hiring freeze right after getting the budget instructions and are expecting savings from natural attrition across the department. All told, our goal is to recognize about $1.5 million in personnel costs in 21. We've worked to reduce our travel costs and to make sure we're utilizing all possible alternatives in terms of being on the ground with districts to do our work. This should result in about a $500,000 reduction in 21. What we are calling operational reductions makes up the biggest pot of intended savings, close to about 2.5 million. This is a lot of different things, but includes moving away from our scheduled technology refresh cycle, reducing the number of contractors we have working in our IT departments, limiting the costs around training and professional development that we provide districts, and taking a hard look at all our planned contractual obligations for any possible savings. Now I'd like to take just a quick review of some major changes in QBE. For fiscal year 21, the biggest change is the teacher salary increase, close to $360 million. It also includes a 5% increase to the salary supplement for district and transportation programs, about 5.4 million. Equalization is increasing by 32 million. Local 5 mil share shows a negative amount, but this reflects an increasing local tax in the local tax digest, which results in about $150 million offset to the QBE formula. Our change in the TRS employer share rate has a significant effect on our formula and reduces the total cost of the state-funded QBE contributions by $166 million. Again, we're seeing significant growth in the state charters, resulting in about $50 million increase in 21. And then lastly, there is another repeat of the $10 million funding for our special needs scholarship. Other notable changes, elimination of the grants for CTAE. This is a newer program, which as of last year was designed to provide cash funding instead of bonds for CTAE classroom equipment, particularly for those districts who haven't received any bond funding in this area in recent years. Our capital outlay program, which provides for school construction costs, is recommended for full funding at $346 million. And we understand what a significant investment this is for our state, and we appreciate the governor and the legislature's consideration of it. Finally, the CTO program. The governor's recommendations in FY20 reduced the program by about 27%, which essentially eliminated all non-personnel spending in the program. Those same reductions are basically repeated in fiscal year 21, but also include a transfer of personnel costs into our school improvement program of 1.2 million, which results in a total reduction in FY21 of about 83%. Thank you, and this concludes my overview of the governor's recommendation for fiscal year 21.
Oh, okay, thank you. I see a few questions.
Okay.
Representative Cantrell.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Dickey. That's fine. Sir, you mentioned it real quick, and I just couldn't write it down fast enough, and I can't find it in my chart here. This chart drives me nuts. But you mentioned the special needs scholarship. I think you mentioned a raise in that amount.
Yeah, really, it brings us to our base. Our base is about 35 million, and we're basically funding the full base going into next fiscal year.
What do you mean by base?
That's basically the cost that it costs to run the program in fiscal year 20, and then any new kids will pull out of the QBE program next year.
Okay.
So we didn't reduce. We're not reducing the base. I think in previous years we may have reduced the base, assuming some movement in and out of the program. This year is actually, which is a very great benefit to the department. We're allowing the base to stay whole, and then we'll pull the new kids out.
Great. Is that increasing every year?
Yes, it's gone up, I believe, around approximately, I think, in the last couple of years, it's been up to about 5,000.
Yeah, it's 5,000 students.
5,000 students now, and I think it was like around 3,500 2 or 3 years ago.
I know you're the CFO, so I may be going beyond, but do you have do you understand why? Why is it going up so much? Do you have any explanation?
I believe I can get that answer for you.
I'd love to know. So
Okay.
Thank you very much. That was helpful.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get that for you.
Vice Chairman Glanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think he pretty much answered my question with Representative Cantrell, and I was actually concerned about the special needs program as well. But when you say pull them out, you're talking about pull them out of the funding for special needs and extracting that money from the QBE. Is that
Well, the base funding formula is the students that are existing, already in the program.
correct?
Then any new students that enter into the program, we pull the funding within QBE associated with those kids out. So basically, whatever that child earns, their segments currently within the QBE funding formula, we would pull those out to fund their special needs.
Gotcha. That's what.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. Could you go back over the numbers you gave about, you said 360 million was the teacher raises,
Yes, ma'am.
and then you said 5.4 million was,
That's the salary supplement for district nutrition and transportation programs. They're actually in the ones in the nutrition program and the others in pupil transportation. So you'd see it's not actually in the QBE, but
and the 32 million was, what was that one?
that's equalization.
Equalization. I do have another question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Okay. On page 5 of 10, 24.198, I see a reduction in the funds for school nurses. So is that somewhere else where we're making up that deficit or that reduction for the school nurse, or what was the, I guess, rationale behind that part?
That was actually just a reduction due to, it's just a formula reduction. We didn't actually, there's no line item cut to the nurses. It's just there were lower FTEs that contributed to that reduction. It's just an enrollment.
So, but could it still have been used to maybe put money back in to be able to get more school nurses?
That would be,
The formula is pure FTE based, so last year they were held harmless. There was a reduction last year, and they were held harmless. So we ran the numbers. The reduction in FTEs that were last year were in this amount here for this formula. So they're just funding it at the current FTE rate right now. So pretty much it's all formula based with FTEs.
Okay.
does that make sense? That's,
I guess I was just, I understand about the FTE portion and how the funding is, but it seems like that if this was extra money, additional money that we're reducing, and I know we always talked about the need for more school nurses in the school, it just seemed like it could have been moved around to somewhere else, and even if it was, you had some schools that have been waiting for nurses or nurse assistant or something else to being able to help support the schools. So I guess I was just looking at it as when I saw a reduction for school nurses, and like I said, I know it's a big issue across the state.
yeah, I think you'd basically have to change the QBE funding formula to do it within QBE. I'm not saying that this body or the governor's office couldn't move it at
Okay.
different methods.
So it still goes back to the whole QBE, our old outdated formula. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just a moment. Representative Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 2419.6, reduced funds for differentiated pay for newly certified math and science teachers. Are we discontinuing the differentiated pay, or is that a formula? What caused that reduction there?
No, sir. That is actually just, we have less teachers that are certified in math and science. It's actually gone down within QBE, and so the funding has gone down. We've had,
So the incentive really hadn't brought in that many additional teachers.
no, sir.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Chairman Silcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. I was just going to ask, because across the board, of course, it's listed in each of these sections, an increase in pay for those making less than $40,000 a year for all the state employees. Is that based in any way on merit, or is that just purely, I mean, to me, that doesn't, I know that personally, if I was the person on time or early, the teacher, working hard every day versus the person that shows up late or calls in sick all the time, I wouldn't be happy about that.
My understanding, the way we've done this at least in our office in the past, is it's at the discretion of the school superintendent to how he distributes that merit-based. But
So
the
it's not
intention-
merit-based, it's just at the superintendent's discretion.
Yeah, but for the most part, I believe in the past, it's been less than 40,000 employees who got the raise.
Thank you.
Accurate.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. A follow-up from Chairman Silcox's question regarding the merit pay. Is there any geographic considerations taken into that? For instance, Metro Atlanta versus certain parts of rural Georgia, et cetera, where the cost of living is different?
No, sir.
No, it's just across the board?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Second, can you give us an understanding when we look at curriculum development in 24.7? Can you please give us an understanding in terms of, generally speaking, what does that curriculum development budget include from a functional perspective?
Curriculum budget. So, I'm sorry, I don't think I fully understand the question.
What I mean is, in terms of
All-
what do we effectively get as a state for that budget? I mean, I understand what curriculum is.
Yeah.
But so
You wanna
what
know,
do we
like,
get?
what- That would be, I'd feel more comfortable letting Dr. Dooley provide exactly all the information that you want. I can give that to you right after this meeting if you want, for the curriculum, basic, what her department does, but I know they're developing the curriculum for the state and working on stuff like the standards revision. I think currently they're working on the math and the science standards, and basically, our policy
My
directors here
apologies, I did want
can-
to clarify. So that budget is really the budget for our curriculum and instructional team and department. So you're talking about the funding of the personnel that provide support related to curriculum and instruction, the development of the curriculum, math standards, the ELA standards and revisions that we're going through now, all those curriculum areas. So the technical support for each of those curriculum areas, those subject matter areas that our students are working with, whether it's math, science, social studies, ELA, CTA, all of that falls under curriculum and development. So it's the department that supports the work of curriculum and development and supports schools in that work.
Okay, and then that curriculum development, ma'am, is that basically distributed out to the 181 school districts?
It supports all the school districts in the system, yes.
Okay,
It's a
so-
department that supports all of the districts.
Correct.
Yes.
So if I get this right, is it fair to say, may it be biology, chemistry, any other STEAM class, English, et cetera, it gets developed at this centralized location and then it's pushed down to the 181 districts?
The standards are developed in concert with teachers across the state through a standards development process, yes. And then the actual standards are provided. The actual curriculum is determined by each local system, but we provide supports if they need to in terms of how they select their curriculum.
So we're just strictly at this level, and again, I'm not being critical, I'm making sure I understand.
Absolutely.
So at this level, hypothetically, if ninth grade biology has 35 standards that the child needs to meet in order to, to demonstrate mastery to move on, we are at a central level saying these are the 35. We will review it and say it's 34, 35, or 36 next year. And then the 181 are effectively given what? Is it money that they get from us through QBE, or is it money that they get from their local tax digest to be able to, I'm assuming, license this curriculum?
So the standards are set, and the standards are essentially saying, here's what we expect for a child to know by when.
Correct.
Right, in
Yep.
each of those subject areas. And like I said, we provide some resources and tools that supports, whether it's professional development, where there's actual resources to be able to assist in those areas. But in terms of the funding, all the funding comes from within the QBE formula for those schools that we push out directly. So the funding for us, when we talk about curriculum and development, is those personnel, any of those resources, supports, additional that we're able to provide to districts. But the actual funding that we push out to districts comes from QBE.
Correct.
Outside
So
of state grants.
I just want to be really I'm sorry, Chairman Dickey, is this okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. I want to be ultra clear. And again, I keep using biology just because I love my biology teacher. Okay. But at the end of the day, and I say we, the state, are determining what the standards are, Krebs cycle, photosynthesis, blah, 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 in terms of what's happening within biology. We then say to the 181 school districts, you are required to make sure that before you give that child a passing grade inside of biology, that they have in fact mastered these 35 standards. Is that accurate? And then it's up to the school district to be able to acquire the curriculum that would basically provide them the ability to teach the 35 standards?
That is correct. And we have samples, like I said, that they can utilize, but they have the flexibility to make those determinations on their own. Of what
Okay,
they
so
want to
we
use
do
to meet those
have, in
standards.
some instances, for some of the courses, we have the ability for them to pick up, I'll call it the DOE biology. And I don't know if we have biology,
we have
but
curriculum options and materials to help them to teach that material if they wish.
okay.
Yes.
And we
So,
provide training.
Right.
For the teachers as well.
so on top of that, then we are pushing money down through QBE for effectively 181 school districts to make I'll say a decentralized decision on, say, biology, chemistry, calculus, et cetera, in terms of how it is that they're going to acquire those particular materials to teach that child.
In effect.
Correct? Yeah, I'm not criticizing.
That's
I'm just
correct.
trying to be factual. Yeah, it's. I
we're a
guess
local control state.
It's a
That's
local
what-
control
that's what
state.
local control
So
means,
we have
yes.
181
Correct.
decentralized conversations around how we're going to teach the Krebs cycle. Even though, unless someone's going to tell me something different, it hasn't changed in a few
We
years.
want to make sure everybody knows what the Krebs cycle is.
True.
And
Right.
there are some deals as to what about the Krebs cycle we expect you to know.
Absolutely.
And that's how we get to the assessment
Right.
at the end.
But
yes.
But it is. It would be
materials that
fair
you
to
use to
say
do
that
that. Correct.
something like the Krebs cycle has not changed, at least in all of our lifetimes, and we don't necessarily expect it to change. And I'm not being facetious. I mean, clearly we can have discussions around certain liberal arts classes, but not in science classes or math classes, where 2 + 2 continues to be 4 unless we're doing certain craziness. Is
Okay.
that fair?
There are changes
All
in
right.
the way that students learn materials.
Is
have.
Let's move on. I got a
Yeah,
couple
we'll
other.
move
Okay.
No,
you
I
got another
apologize.
question?
I do have another
Okay.
question. I apologize.
One more.
One more question. In the opening remarks, there was a comment made that we were reducing IT spending, professional development, software upgrades, and also CTAE. That was part of the opening remarks. Am I correct?
I had CT, all those were remarks in
Ri-
the statement.
Right. I just have one question, sir. As much as it pains me to think that we're going to get behind on software and IT, what really pains me is the professional development. I like to think that the teachers are what makes the difference, not the curriculum, not the classroom, and not the chairs, the desks. So is there a plan in place, either at the central level, or are we coordinating with the 181 school districts to find a way to overcome this hole in PD?
As it relates specifically to the IT
No, it's
areas
spec-
that you're talking about overall.
I took the reduction of PD to be overall, not just for IT professionals, meaning professional development.
It's within stuff like curriculum.
Right.
budget, so there-
And has there been,
Yes, so one of the things we've been talking about is reducing in terms of the professional development, not reducing professional development, but as much of the travel that we have been doing to the sending out everybody to the different places. It may not be everybody that goes from the department or that area that goes out for travel for that face-to-face professional development. So making sure that we also utilize some of our virtual options as well for professional development, and pushing into conferences that some of our either districts or partners, our advocacy partners are already having, and pushing into those as well instead of us designing our own large conference for everything.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Could I ask, go to page 6 on the tracking sheet, 24.23, state schools.
Yes, state schools.
Could you talk to the decreases there, how many positions, what those people do, and just how it's going, what specifics are going to go on to our state schools?
Yes, I think.
Could you speak into the mic
Yeah,
a
I'm
little better?
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I've actually had some communication with Dr. Moore about this, and I know that there's some vacant positions, and we took more of a strategic approach to the state schools cuts and how we're planning on implementing them. And a lot of maintenance and repairs and stuff, we've gotten kind of lucky, I guess, in the last year, because there was a lot of money put into for some older facilities to bring, up some boilers and stuff like that. And they took a strategic approach to looking at what they could and could not provide for for their schools, but nothing affected the students. He had made it very clear to me that none of these cuts will affect how they teach the students. And so they more looked at along the lines of cutting, costs with supplies, materials, maintenance and repairs was a huge part of their budget piece that they're actually going to cut into this 1.2. That's not to say in the next fiscal year if something does go, they do need some repairs. We may not be back for some funding, but that's most of it. I think the analogy was we may not get to paint this building this year. We may have to wait till next year.
So the vacant positions, could you speak to that?
The vacant, I have to get a detailed list from him exactly what he cut. Now those, like I said, that 830,000 is not the specific vacant positions that we're cutting. We're cutting more along the maintenance and repairs.
Okay.
This isn't our plan, so we don't have an actual detail. I do know that there's no teachers on that vacant positions cut.
Okay. Could you speak right below there, 24.25 testing? I hear the governor is recommending a lot less testing. Could you speak to what savings that might be if we were to do that?
So any savings right now related to testing wouldn't necessarily be immediate. Obviously, because if it goes forward, we still got the current maintenance and operation of the system that we have. Additionally, with the adjustments with testing, if we reduce based on the governor's announcement from yesterday, our assessments, there's still some other things with that funding that we would need to repurpose any savings to. For instance, one of the things we talked about that was in that bill, Senate Bill 367, was shortening the window for the assessment time. So that means for us, we've got to get those assessment results back faster. There's a cost to getting those results back faster to schools in order to maximize that instructional time for students. Additionally, we need to update our alternate assessments for our special needs students. And we're currently going through the math and science standards revisions. And so there'll be a cost to updating our assessments, even the ones we have remaining, to make sure that they align to the new Georgia standards.
Okay. Chairman Silcox.
Nope.
You got a question? Oh. Vice Chairman Glenton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question, is along the lines of the chairman in 24.23, page 6. My concern is that we're cutting vacant positions to really meet an end of what we've been asked to do, rather than meeting the necessary things that we need to be doing. And so my question is, if we can cut $830,000 or whatever positions are called for, if we can cut them today because we have budgetary issues, the question begs itself, did we ever really need it? And if we justify by itemizing those positions and what their roles and responsibilities were, why have we budgeted them in the beginning?
So I can't speak to the specifics of that. I think what I'll say is we are an agency that's used to operating under budget cuts. I think we've been under cuts now for consistently for at least 8 to 10 years. And so oftentimes there are times when a cut happens, we will, and if we can operate as efficiently as we can without, or we don't have the capacity or ability to hire back as quickly, then we haven't hired back as quickly. That doesn't mean we haven't needed the position, but that means that we have learned to, as much as possible, and in the landscape that we've been in, work under a very streamlined budget.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. Follow up,
Go
please.
ahead.
And so the continuation of that question is, this is reminiscent of non-essential personnel. So if we can get rid of them when the time calls to get rid of them, the question begs itself, why did we hire them in the first place? Why did we allocate monies to them in the first place? And he said in his comments that we may come back next year to ask for additional funds for probably some of these positions as situation change. Why are we saying we don't need them this year?
So I would argue that we aren't saying we don't need them. I think we are certainly meeting a requirement or recommendation that has been made. So if there are budget cuts that we are going to make, then we are certainly going to take the mantle of seeing how efficient we can be and making those adjustments. And that's just the nature and the operation of how we've had to operate and how we will continue to operate. If there are budget cuts that are called for next year, we will figure out where we've got to find those cuts and where we've got to streamline to be able to still remain and provide the best support that we can to our districts and schools.
So translation, if I might, is simply we need them, we want them, but we're in a situation that's forcing us to cut.
I don't know that I would say.
You don't have to answer that.
That's
I
the
understand your
translation.
position.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well stated. Chairman Silcock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just as a follow-up, my understanding is that, of course, the Department of Education did suffer significant cuts during the recession. But I know that consistently during the Deal administration, we as a legislative body fought very hard to give y'all back many, many funds that were taken away during the recession. And if I'm not mistaken, I know we fully funded QBE for the first time 2 years ago. And then y'all got the largest raise of anybody in the budget last year with $3,000 pay raises for the teachers. So I would not say that you guys have been suffering.
No, you are absolutely correct. We are very grateful that QBE has been funded for the last few years, and as we stated early on, we're
Yes.
grateful to the governor's office and grateful to you all, and we're grateful for the raises for the teachers. We do want to make sure we clarify the difference between the QBE budget and the department's operating budget, because those are two different things.
Sure.
So while there has been full funding of the QBE budget, that has not necessarily been the case for the Georgia Department of Education's operating budget.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any more questions from our committee for you, but we do have several people signed up that want to speak, and I want to try to get to them here. So thank y'all very much for coming.
Thank you so much for your time.
We might have some other questions or needs next week. So be on call if you would, and we'll try to get those to you.
And we wanted to give you guys just a highlighter of one pager of some of the key points that Mr. Russ presented earlier. So he'll share that with you.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Okay. Thank y'all for being here. First on my list is Georgia School Counselor Association, George Ray and Jennifer Diaz. If y'all would come up and for the mic.
I have someone that needs to sign up. Where's the sign-up list?
So, okay, we'll put it back.
Thank you.
Do you want to just call her at the end?
I'll
I
just
know who it is.
I'll just call on you at the end if it's.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jennifer, you want to come over here? Just
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, with
George.
your indulgence, we'd like to flip the first two speakers and start with GACTE, if that's all right with you.
What?
We just want to flip the first two on your list and start with Ms. Bell.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today. My name is George Ray, and I'm with the firm of Nelson Mullins, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to work with the Georgia Association for Career and Technical Education, the CTA teachers around the state who are delivering great course content to our K-12 students. With me here today is the current president of the association, Ms. Yolanda Bell, who is here in Fulton County, and she's going to bring to you some information about their budget request.
Welcome.
Thank you.
for
Thank
being
you
here.
very much for having me, and thank you for allowing me to switch so I can make sure not to get a ticket on my car. So, like George said, my name is Yolanda Bell, and I am the president of the Georgia Association of Career and Technical Education. I was a high school CTE teacher in marketing in Gwinnett County for 10 years. I'm currently a Fulton County resident, very proud, and also the proud executive director of Career Technical Education for Fulton County. So, like George said, I am also the president of Georgia Association of Career Technical Education. So I want to bring greetings from all of our CTE CTE teachers across the state, and thank you for your support and continued support of CTE. We are very proud to have a 96% graduation rate of CTE pathway completers, and we know that what we're doing in our classrooms and what our teachers are doing for our students every day is making a difference in the personal lives, but also the economic and workforce development of Georgia. So we're really proud of that. I'm here today to ask you to fully fund our request for the construction-related equipment bonds that each system applies for to start new programs within the local education agencies. We use these funds to replicate the equipment and environment for high wage, high demand, high skill jobs where students can receive credentials of value that lead to great college and career options after school. We are great stewards of this money, and we use this money to make sure that our students are college and career ready. I'd like to just point out that even within your districts, that this funding is going to include approximately 7 information technology computer science labs, 2 film labs, 5 healthcare science labs, 3 engineering labs, and 1 HVAC labs. And that's just to name a few. We also have our other pathways that our teachers are teaching every day. So again, I just wanted to thank you for your support and just ask that you fully fund our construction-related equipment bonds.
Thank you very much. Great program, and I know I and many others are very, very supportive of the wonderful teaching and results we get from our CTA programs. It's really essential in a great program, so thank you for what you do. Now, any questions from the committee? Well, thank you very much for being here, and we'll certainly take that into very high consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. George.
Here we go again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again. But also, we also have the honor of representing the Georgia School Counselor Association, which celebrated their day on the Hill today. Thank you for being part of that presentation. I hope you all saw those recognitions in the House and by the governor earlier. But I'm pleased to introduce you to Jennifer Diaz, who is from Gwinnett County and is one of the advocacy chairs for the association. We'll talk to you a little bit about the school counselor ratio.
Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Representative Dickey, and members of the House Appropriations Education Subcommittee. That's a whole mouthful. So I am Jennifer Diaz. I'm one of the co-advocacy chairs for GSCA. I'm a school counselor of 18 years, currently in middle school, so I'm kind of used to people not listening to me. We have a membership of approximately 1,200 members in GSCA that are currently serving our students. GSCA is recommending 2 changes to the fiscal year 2020 education budget, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to ask for that. Our first recommendation is to include school counselors in any teacher pay raise that happens this year. School counselors are master's level educators and critical in every school building. Students visit our offices with issues such as homelessness, self-injury, suicidality, family changes, panic attacks, death of family members, physical and sexual abuse, bullying, cyberbullying, and that was just my Monday and Tuesday of this week. This is on top of running multi-tiered systems of support through comprehensive counseling programs with school-wide initiatives aimed at improving school climate, coordinating and participating in educational interventions for students that are struggling, engaging in teacher and parent consultations, running counseling resiliency small groups for students that need just a little bit more as we prepare them all for success in post-secondary education and careers. Even though the role of the school counselor and the teacher is very, very different, but that doesn't mean that either is less important. We support one another and we have a partnership in the schools. We work in unison to support our students and our families. So for these reasons, we are asking that school counselors be included in any raise for certified educators this year. We are also asking, our second budget recommendation is to fully fund the school counselor ratios that were signed into law in 2013. In the 2013 Title 20 Cleanup Act, a 3-year plan was set forth to lower the ratios of 1 school counselor to 450 students and to phase in funding for special ed, gifted ed, remedial ed, and ESOL segments. The funding for these segments is important because without the funding, the school counselor ratios are often inflated to unreasonable caseloads. Partial funding was allocated in fiscal year 2018 when Governor Deal added approximately $4.1 million to fund the ESOL and remedial education segments. The special education and the gifted segments remain unfunded, and school counselors who work in schools with high numbers of special education students and gifted students often struggle to manage those caseloads. Please know that all students, regardless of the FTE category under which they fall, are served by a school counselor. My special education teachers would hate me, and some of those students have stolen my heart. However, funding the special education and gifted education segments would add approximately 523 school counselors to the state. In many areas of the state, an additional school counselor can make a world of difference to our students. The need is great, and we ask that you consider fully funding the remaining segments as was outlined in 2013. Thank you for your time and consideration. Do you have any questions?
You do have a question, but thank you very much. I know you're stretched very thin, counselors are, and I heard that long list of responsibilities. So, Chairman Silcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So appreciate what the school counselors do, and was just curious. I know I was really thrilled that last year, I believe, was the first time that we also included with y'all funding for mental health counselors to help relieve school counselors of so many responsibilities that you have. Have those mental health counselors helped you reduce your responsibility somewhat in terms of talking to kids about suicide and awful things like that?
Well, the APEX counselors are in place. They're not in place everywhere. And those schools that do have the APEX counselors are really appreciative of that. If I had a mental health counselor that I could refer to inside of my building when I have students that are suicidal or when they're having panic attacks, I would be so grateful. I don't have that wonderful counselor in our building yet. Hopefully that will be expanded.
Yeah.
But they're working on partnering with those school counselors.
Right, because it's supposed to be in every high school. So it's coming.
Yes.
Sounds like.
Fingers are crossed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Chairman Nix.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation there. One's a comment, one's a question. And the comment, we funded school counselors last year, and I would assume they would be in the raise this year. Is that
They
a
are.
true consideration?
Okay, good.
They
We
are.
just wanted to make sure.
We don't want that battle again.
Yeah, please.
The second thing, the question is, do we know where we stand in that ratio across the state today, counselors to students?
It really depends on the district, especially because we're a local control state. It just depends.
Okay.
I want to make sure my committee understands, I think, that the ratio is a funding ratio, and it's really up to the local school system on who they hire, how many they hire, but that's and they could certainly, a local school system could certainly put their funds in to do more hiring for counselors if it's so they wish. So, but that's the level the state has funds for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of want to, Chairman Nick stole my thunder a little bit, but so we're trying to get to this 1 to 450 ratio. Overall, I know you kind of skirted the question, but overall, what are we now? I know you want to go district by district, but can you give me ballpark? I'm not going to hold you to it.
Mm-hmm. We've heard numbers as high as 800. I would say probably averages around 500 to 600.
We can, and just to be clear, there's the funding ratio and then there's the actual ratio. The funded ratio is somewhere around 1 to 520. I think I'll get that exact number for you and share it with the committee. Yeah. As far as total number of FTE headcount, we can find that out too, but we don't have that right off.
So what number would we need to appropriate to get to that 1 to 450?
We do have that number.
Okay. So, is this where I asked for the big number?
This is where you asked for the big number.
Okay. So, for special education segments, $13,096,516.10. Gifted education segments, $11,541,893.60.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Special.
Just that 11,000. I think you said it wrong, but
Okay. Oh, I did. 11,541,000. I'm not used to asking for this big number. 11,541,893.
And that's for what? What's the category?
Gifted education.
Okay.
So a total of $24,638,000 and some change.
Would get us to the 1 to 450 ratio.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all. The question I have, it kind of goes back to the school nurse question I had earlier. So are you all paid through the QBE formula as well? Because I know Chairman had mentioned something a little bit a few minutes ago.
Yes,
So if there was a reduction in the number of students or the FTE, then you all could have been on that line item as well?
that would be the way I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Jones.
Just a quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We're seeing higher ed institutions.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Didn't have the mic on.
Oh, sorry. I'll use my radio voice. Higher ed institutions are starting to do a lot of research around using AI-powered bots and AI to basically leverage effectively their success coaches. They don't clearly have the exact same job description that you have. I think yours is tougher, to be completely frank with you. But are we exploring ways to leverage AI to take on what I'm going to call, and I know there's no such thing as, I'll say, the simple things, okay, but the more rudimentary things to lever you into the more, I'll say, complicated, intense things so that we could gain more leverage using technology like that? Is that being discussed at the 912 level?
I'm going to say I'm having like a reaction to that. I would say no for school counseling.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, I see no other questions. Thank you so much
Okay.
for being here. Very informative, and
Okay.
thank you for those recommendations.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Helen Sloat and Together Georgia. Juanita? Yeah, okay. I couldn't read it well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Helen Sloat, and I have the great honor and privilege to represent Together Georgia. And I have with me today former juvenile court judge Juanita Stedman, who now leads Together Georgia. But she asked me to kind of give you a brief history on the non-QBE formula grants, because I know many of you on the committee may know something about it, but some of you may not. So I wanted just to kind of give you a quick history of that. I'm speaking actually to line 24.13.3, and there's a proposed cut of $1.15 million in the grant program. Okay, sure. 24.13.3. And these grants were actually developed in 2006 based on some legislation passed. It was called Senate Bill 618. The grants were to make up the local share for the educational instruction cost of children that were placed in the 20 residential treatment facilities around the state. These facilities take Georgia's most difficult children. They provide the services on site to those children. Those kids cannot go to a regular education facility in the district because of their behavioral and their mental health needs. So when these grants were configured in 2006, they were put into place because the local share dollars for those kids don't follow them to the residential treatment facilities. In around 2014, I know Sarah can give you a lot of history about this because she helped with the actual formula creation at that point in time. There was a formula created for the grants so that the 20 facilities could access funding for these children. And so now, the formula is kind of based on the number of kids that are actually being served, the teachers, the parapros, the acuity level of the child, and those types of things to come up with an amount that's then paid for to the residential treatment facilities. So that's just a brief little synopsis of how the grants came about, what they actually do, and we're raising some concerns about the $1.15 million cut. I will say while I'm here, before I turn this over to Judge Stedman, that we are very supportive of the proposed increases in the raises for the teachers that are also for these residential treatment facilities, and that's at line 24.13.5. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Judge Stedman.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. And I know some of you, and many of you have these facilities in your districts. I think the Methodist Children's Home, Twin Cedars, Hillside, Georgia Baptist, Devereaux, and you could go through the list. I know that the governor and the lieutenant governor both are putting a focus on foster care, and we are so very grateful for that. And at the Eggs and Issues breakfast, Lieutenant Governor Duncan gave statistics of what happens to the children in Georgia who are in foster care. The number of them who end up homeless, the number of them who do not graduate from high school, the number of them who become human trafficked, and the number of them who end up in prison. And when he did that, he then said, we want to be and we are the best state to do business. Let's be the best state to do foster care. And I think what he meant and what I appreciated was, let's be the best state for these children. The children in these centers cannot go to another school. They are difficult. And as a judge, what I knew is if I sent a child, a young sex offender, to Twin Cedars, I had a great hope that that child could leave Twin Cedars and not become an adult sex offender, but become an educated individual who would then be able to go out and be productive in our society. Did I hit something? I thought I missed that. So I think that that's the thing that we have to focus on. This is instructional money. One of these facilities said to me that their non-QBE grant is 21% of their education budget. That's big. That's big. There's not other funds that come anywhere else for this, not for what it takes to care for those children. Many of you, and I've seen some of you at these facilities, you know that these agencies go out and raise money for the other things, but they cannot raise the money to educate these children. And as I say, and anytime I've been in your office, I've said this, and you'll hear me say it again, you pay for it now or you pay for it later. If we do not care for these children now, they will be homeless. There will be generational dependency, which I saw in my courtroom time and time again, of families who they had been in foster care and then they were there having children in foster care, or they'll be in prison. And so I think that we're just asking that you reinstate it. I had to have Helen here because I had never as a judge heard of a non-QBE grant. I didn't have a clue what that meant. And even sometimes when she explains it, I don't know what it means. But what I do know is how very significant and how important this money is to the children that this money serves, which are the most vulnerable children in this state. So thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, we do. And I've got one, and maybe for Helen. Our line
If it's
here.
technical, it's for Helen.
Yes,
so.
that's.
I will try.
Our track sheet says the reduction is due to attendance.
Right.
Is that not correct, or is the formula being changed, or what?
It may be.
I want to address that too.
Okay, it may be due to a reduction in the number of students. Like a regular school, we have counts in the fall and in the spring. The problem is our kids are rolling in and out with great fluidity, and, more so probably than in a public school, just because maybe they were in a PRTF and all of a sudden a mayor group decides that they're not going to have they don't have the medical necessity to stay, so they're moved out, for instance. Or they may get moved to a different placement because a different placement might be a different or a better place for them to be served. And I know Judge Stedman can speak more to that. As an old educator, because that's what I started out being, was a special education teacher in Camilla, Georgia, as I tell my daughter who did Teach for America. I did Teach for America before it was called that in Camilla, Georgia. And as a parent, what you knew is when you had those count days, I remember my children in elementary school in Marietta City, they got popsicles if they made sure they came on that day when that count was going to be. Everybody in here is an educator, knows that. You talk about it, you get them there. Our folks don't, they might have popsicles, but they don't get to say, you've got to be here on that day. And they could get 3 students that night when there was just 1 student not there that day.
Thank you. I see one question. Chairman Silcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for your work, Your Honor, with these very vulnerable children. I really appreciate what you do so much. And I was just going to say that I do know that so many of these situations are so fluid, and there's custody questions, there's guardianship questions, there's all those things. And so attendance, as you said, is it's not a stable number ever in these facilities. And so with that in mind, I was just curious if there were any other numbers in this budget that affect this very vulnerable population, because I feel certain there are some other numbers.
So, not in this particular education budget,
Okay.
I guess, except for the fact they get the QBE funding.
Okay, but maybe DBHDD and
Right, there is funding through DBHDD
Mhm.
and through the Department of Juvenile Justice in their community
Okay.
services program too.
Okay.
Because there are a very small number of the residential treatment facilities that actually take youth from DJJ.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see no other questions. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for what
Thank
you
you.
do, and thank you for being here.
Thank you again for your
Okay.
time to talk.
All right, moving on. I know it's getting late, and thank y'all for staying. Margaret Chickalarelli. I never can say your name well. I love it. It's a beautiful name. It is a beautiful name.
Do you mind if I bring my coffee?
You can absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Claire Suggs.
I know. We're all. I know. Well, let me briefly introduce Claire. Claire is new with us at Page. She is a senior education policy analyst. We're very lucky to have her, and she'll have a few brief comments for you after I address the group. I'm Margaret Ciccarelli from Page, representing about 97,000 educators statewide, everybody from parapros to bus drivers, many classroom teachers, students in teacher preparation programs, and in high school education pathways across the state, as well as some retirees. We would respectfully want to address you regarding the proposed raise, but first to thank you so much for the $3,000 raise that was awarded in the FY 20 last year. It has gone a huge way to boost teacher morale across the state, and we think the $2,000 as proposed by the governor in the FY 21 would do the same. When we surveyed our educators back in the fall regarding whether or not they thought the pay raise, an additional $2,000 would boost retention and recruitment, they overwhelmingly thought that it would, and they ranked it as the strongest influence on their decision to stay in education behind administration in the school and school climate. So we want to thank you for what you have done and encourage you to continue to do that important work in the next fiscal year budget. And while we're thanking you for things, thank you for the school security grants in the AFY 19. They did a lot to reassure our educators that they are safe, and most importantly, that their students are safe. So thank you for that, but there is still safety work and school climate work to be done, largely to improve school climate and mental health. It is so appropriate that I just am coincidentally here to talk about school counselors and school social workers and school psychologists on Georgia School Counselor at the Capitol Day, because our educators, as part of the 97,000 page member strong, have indicated in our legislative priorities that improving school counselor, school psychologist, and school social worker ratios are critical to improving school climate and safety. So I want to make clear that it's not just the school counselors that think that there should be more school counselors, but the entire education community. And then Claire has a few additional comments.
Hi. Thank you and hello. Yes, as you said, I'm Claire Suggs.
Welcome.
And I really want to echo Margaret's thanks for the investments that the General Assembly, led by this committee, have made, and speak specifically to the impact of the full funding of the QBE and the pay raise. You know, as we know, during those years in which there were those steep austerity cuts, districts were furloughing teachers, they were eliminating teaching positions, the school calendar was cut. And so now, for potentially the third year year in a row of full funding of the QBE. We see districts, have really moved back from that. They are hiring teachers again. As we know, they are looking for more teachers to hire. Our kids are in school for a full 180 days. So it is making a difference, and those are the kind of investments that improve learning, and that's what we're really here for. And also speaking to the pay raise, as Margaret said, the $3,000 last year and the contemplated $2,000 this year. One of the things that we know is prior to the pay raise, our teachers were compensated at about 66% of what professionals in other fields with the same level of education and experience were earning. So these pay raises really are a significant step forward in closing that gap and allowing us to do a better job of recruiting and keeping those great teachers in the classroom, which is what we're all really aiming for. Thank you, Claire.
Well, thank y'all. I've got a question. Margaret, it's been a year since we announced the $3,000 pay raise, and we fully funded QBE. We're putting more resources in the schools for teachers. Have we seen an uptick in teachers retention or our universities seeing more young people going into the profession? I know it's pretty quick, but do you foresee us seeing the needle moving on that issue?
I hope that we will see it. There's some lag in that data collection in large part because the raise wasn't, even though we passed it last year, y'all were gracious enough to pass it, it wasn't implemented and didn't hit those paychecks until the school year started. So it's taken a while to feel that. We do know that Georgia's teacher college preparation, the teacher preparation program enrollment has been down in the last few years. And so we hope to see both a rise in that as well as those retention and rates that you just referred to. The PSC, and I believe, does DOE actually, or it's more the Professional Standards Commission publishes that information annually, so we look forward to that report.
Okay. Just talking about those raises, I've got some other appropriation chairmen not speaking to me right now. I'm giving raises or being asked to, and they're asked to lay people off on some of these things. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you,
y'all
Mr.
for
Chair.
being
We
here.
know you have a tough job.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got one other question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all. The question I have is a concern I raised a couple of weeks ago, our last meeting, when it comes down to the turnaround schools and the school improvement. And I saw that there was a reduction in staffing, and then I saw a reduction in RESA. I saw a reduction in some other stuff in those categories. And I'm really concerned about the support that the teachers are going to be able to get with those reductions. Could y'all kind of speak on that as far as how you all see that affecting those teachers that are in those particular areas? And even I know RESA doesn't just focus on school improvement and the low performing, but across the regional. But I know they are a good support mechanism for those school districts.
These are great questions. Thank you. We are also concerned about the proposed cut to RESAs. Paige works a lot with rural Georgia schools and partners with rural RESAs, but also in Metro. They serve critical functions to support the work that goes on in the classroom. As for the CTO, my understanding is that those personnel will be moved into the school improvement division, and that most of the cuts are the existing personnel cuts, and then those personnel will be moved into the school improvement division. I think it's important, and I heard your comments during the joint appropriations hearing and agreed with them. Let's not lose focus on serving the students in those communities. My hope is that we can streamline that service and better serve them through the school improvement division at DOE.
Okay. We're going to keep moving. Time's getting late. Thank y'all. Thank you, Margaret, and Ms. Oaks for being here. Next is Teach for America. Well, welcome. The mic is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the Education Committee allowing us to speak. I am Khadijah Abdullah. I'm the Executive Director for Teach for America for Metro Atlanta. And this is Angela Orange, who leads some of our district strategy work. We both are former teachers. A little bit about myself. I'm a high school biology, chemistry, and physics teacher. I taught in Louisiana. Originally from Alabama, and I've been an educator for almost 16 years of my life. And we are really excited for the last 20 years to have been doing really great work across the state of Georgia. We've actually brought about 15,000 teachers to the state of Georgia due to the support that this legislature has allowed us to do over the past 20 years, and actually have been impacted about 300,000 students. Our organization's vision is one day all children in this nation will have the opportunity to attain an excellent education, and we believe that our children who are most vulnerable, particularly our students who come from high need, low-income families, are those students who actually need high-quality teachers the most. And so we recruit folks from across the country who generally would not think about being educators, and convince folks like myself, who was a former pharmaceutical rep and a reformed attorney, to commit our lives to education, and that's what we do. So we are asking today for this body to maintain our current appropriation for funding, and what that funding allows us to do is continue to recruit new teachers each year to the state of Georgia, and that allows us also to continue to support our existing teachers in the state. We provide a summer institute program that actually allows us to coach right at Georgia State, these new educators, and then we provide coaches and support. And so it's really nice to be in the space tonight with lots of other educators and thinking about the entire whole child. And our role is actually, let's get the bodies in the classroom to do great work. And the way our work works is actually we provide excellent training that is research-based. And you all did, the state of Georgia actually audited us about a few years back and found out that our teachers' students, even though we're not all traditionally trained, are actually performing just as well, if not better, than other teachers' students across the state. And so we are a well-researched organization. Our folks are committed. They're sticking around. Even though only a very small percentage of us initially wanted to be educators, about 80% of us are still doing real great work in the state of Georgia today. So just will stop there, but want to thank you all for your time and questions.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Representative Cantrell.
Thank you, Ms. Abdullah, for being here. How many teachers did you guys recruit to Georgia last year?
80 new teachers
80?
to the state to join another about 800 teachers.
Is that, would you say that's an average year for you guys?
I would say now, I think the conversation earlier about teacher recruitment, it's down across the entire country. The economy is a little bit better. And so folks have other options, and they're not necessarily choosing education. I'd say at our strongest year, probably in 2012, we brought in about 350 teachers to the state.
Wow.
And so right now, 80 is about average when you're looking at other schools of education's enrollment. And so we expect it to swing back. We're not rooting for the economy to turn down. And so we're trying to come up with other solutions to think about ways to recruit. We are partnering with Georgia Tech to find SPED and math teachers. And actually, we're able to recruit, I think, 20.
Yeah, we're able to bring about 25 high school and middle school math and science teachers to our partner district, which includes Clayton County.
That's great.
So we were able to do that from schools like UGA, Georgia Tech, and Emory, who might not have been interested in education, but through our recruitment and selection process, we were able to bring them to classrooms actually that may have had a sub in the classroom previously.
Thank you. Great information.
Good question, Chairman. Chairman Silcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for what you do. I'm a huge fan of Teach for America, and one of my best friends, her son did Teach for America, and he started a KIPP school in Tennessee, and it's the top school in the state.
Oh, wow.
And he's awesome. But also know a lot about Teach for America from the Governor's Commission for Volunteerism and Service, And I know that do y'all have a line item in the current budget at all, or what line item are y'all at? On our, just curious on the tracking sheet. Okay. Is there a requested cut in here? No, it's just to stay the same. And so, but y'all are also still receiving money from DCA through the AmeriCorps program, the grant. you're not receiving any federal funds?
So we're
Okay.
we're a state AmeriCorps, so we do receive funds through the AmeriCorps, and what that allows us is just additional supplement to cover some of the costs of our recruitment and our training.
Right, right. And I know that is a federal grant that comes through the National AmeriCorps Corporation.
That is accurate.
And so those are not state monies, but that does supplement what you get from the state.
It does, yes.
Okay, great.
In addition to our own private fundraising.
Okay. And maybe y'all could get that information, the exact numbers to Chairman Dickey. That would help him. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank y'all for being here. Appreciate
Thank
it.
y'all so much.
Great program. Next on our list is Joel Mackey. Come talk to me about some good ag education. Yeah. I was hoping you were going to jump over that.
Well, good afternoon. I'll try to get in my concise mode, considering the lateness of the hour. But my name is Joel Mackey, and I'm with the law firm Hall Booth Smith, but I represent the Georgia Vocational Agricultural Teachers Association. And I'd like to echo some of the sentiment that's already been said today and thank this august body for the support of the teacher raise that was given to teachers across the state last year. It's greatly appreciated by ag teachers, and they're certainly excited about the governor's recommendation for additional $2,000. As you may know, agricultural education, we have almost 500 ag teachers scattered throughout the state. They provide in-school classroom education on a variety of things from agri-sciences, poultry science, horticulture, forestry, things that are critically important, certainly in our rural areas of our state. But increasingly, we find an increased presence here in the greater metro area, and I want to speak to that in just a moment. Let me be very specific about some things that we're looking at, and we would ask that you would look at as well. In line 2415 of your tracking sheet, the governor's office has recommended $286,000 in new funds. The way we understand that is that's meant to fund the state portion of extended day and extended year that's made necessary by the or results from the $2,000 salary increase that's baked into the QBE increase. One of our things that we've worked through and will be continuing to work through is it appears that that number does not include funds for the Young Farmer Program, which results in about a $93,000 shortfall to fully fund the young farmer aspect of the teacher raise. Separately, we'll be talking, and we've talked, I think, every year for the past 10 years, and some of those years it's coincided with challenging years, and this may be one of those. But our program continues to grow throughout the state. We've been averaging 10 to 15 new ag ed programs over the past 10 years. We're the third largest group of FFA members throughout the country because of that growth. And this year we've got requests for 16 new programs. To fund those is about $8,500 in state funding. So our request is around a 136 just for program growth. Let me make a special mention, and this is kind of the point I alluded to, and Chairman Dickey, you were in some meetings, I think, over the summer where this was discussed. We have some great people that are wanting to partner with us in the greater metro area to bring in ag programs. One, I think, was here earlier in Gwinnett County, have made an initial request to have 2 ag programs, I understand, to go into that area. We have a request that's kind of out there about a new young farmer program in Fulton County. Cherokee County wants additional ag programs for Forsyth County. So we are increasingly, people are seeing the value of ag education because of its close nature of applied sciences, STEM education, and we continue to grow in the greater metro area, as well as our continued strength in rural Georgia. I'll finish with echoing a sentiment that Ms. Bell brought to you earlier when she was speaking about career and technical and agricultural education. The governor's budget does recommend some funding in the bond package for capital outlay for new construction. The ag ed portion of that is around little less than $1 million of what that was requested by local systems that are getting new constructions. And so when I think the total number, and George May can speak to that, is a little bit north of $10 million. So we would echo the sentiment that if the bond package could be reviewed related to the capital equipment request. But I would echo the sentiment of everyone that's speaking on behalf of the almost 500 ag teachers. We appreciate this General Assembly's support of agricultural education, and specifically this committee, and we'll be glad to answer any questions about our needs.
Thank you, George. And Joel. It's a long day. I'm ready to go.
I saw you earlier.
But I just want to reiterate what you said, your statement. I couldn't agree more with it. I think more and more parents and children and teachers and schools are seeing the value in ag education and other CTE programs as well. And just I just feel very led to try to expand that, especially in these metro areas. I think it's a great program with the sciences and the STEM and all those type things. It's just great program. So I'm certainly very committed to trying to do that in the best way we can. And you're right. I have had several requests for new young farmer programs across our state that I want that program to come into. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Let's keep them quick. Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you tell me about, I see on 24.11, the grants for the CTAE was being cut, about $2 million. What portion of that, or how many of your programs actually were participating in that grant program?
Yeah. So, and there may be others in the room that can give more historical context, but I think historically a lot of the capital equipment funding has been in the bond package. A couple of years, and I'm looking at some that might remember this better than that, that's been funded through cash funding. And I believe this $2 million was related to some of that capital being inserted for the cash funding of some of that capital equipment. So at the end of the day, there are a segment of ag education that receives, every year there's local systems putting in with the Department of Education. That's historically been between $10 and $12 million related to new construction or additions to programs that can qualify for that capital equipment. And a portion of that, usually between $1 million and $2.5 million, is ag ed. The other is for other aspects of career and technical agriculture education. So I'm not sure I'm as prepared to say what percentage of that $2 million went to ag as opposed to other areas. But that's my understanding, is that money, and I'll stand corrected certainly, but that was related to maybe how we dealt with it as opposed to historically some of the bond money.
Thank you. Good question. Good. Chairman Silcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I so appreciate the agricultural community in Georgia, and just so proud of that for our state. And I know that the forestry program, particularly the graduate program at the University of Georgia, is one of the best in the nation. And I was just curious if any of this was going to adversely affect that, because I'm a dog.
Well, there's a few dogs, and we got the #1 recruiting class, Mr. Chairman, today in the football, so we're certainly a lot of dogs in the room. But we are continually the people. I think you would hear this for a couple of different colleges at the University of Georgia and Fort Valley State and at ABAC. We continue to provide a pipeline of students for Warnell School of Forestry, probably School of Ecology at UGA, and certainly the College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, who in turn find themselves regularly in the veterinary school, and any number of other professional schools. So I think if you looked at the population of ag ed students, you would find that a lot of those wind up with 4-year degrees, whether that be out there as a professional in the timber industry, poultry scientists. One of the biggest demands right now is we need more poultry scientists to go work for the broiler industry here in the state of Georgia. So we find ourselves not only sending students back to the farm, there's a segment of our population that certainly does that, not only to the technical schools that might have some way to extend and get a certificate and go out there and become an active participant in the workforce fairly quickly, but we send those to the Warnells and the other College of Ags throughout our state. And I think the more teachers we have to connect Cherokee County, Forsyth County, Gwinnett County, and frankly, rural Georgia, I'm going to shut up, but I'll say this. I came from rural Georgia. I grew up in Wilcox County, Georgia, down in middle Georgia, and I get accused part of being part of the problem, part of the people that left and came to Atlanta. We need more people that are willing to stay down there and continue to contribute to it. And I say that with a great love for that community. And one way we do it is we invest in them at the Ag Ed high school level.
Thank you, Joel. Rural to metro, right?
Sometimes I want to reverse that.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. We're getting short here. I think we have one other person that maybe wants to address our group. If you could keep it short, I think we've got other commitments. So come and introduce yourself and.
Thank you so much, Chairman Dickey and this other esteemed members. Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Meadows. I'm Coordinator of Student Health Services for Fulton County School System, but I'm also the State Director for the Georgia Association of School Nurses. And I have with me my colleague, Melanie Bales, who is the Coordinator of Health Services for Cobb County, and she's the President for the Georgia Association of School Nurses. And I am going to do my best. We will do our best to talk as quickly then as we can, since we're the last ones on the list.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So first of all, let me say thank you so much to this committee for supporting us in past years, for helping us to restore the school nurse funding. We really, really appreciate you all. We know that last year, or along this same time, we were here, the two of us, also advocating on behalf of our funding, and we're here again to advocate on behalf of our funding. As it relates to school nurses in the state of Georgia, we hear about the teachers and we hear about counselors, et cetera, but we want you to know school nurses are extremely important and valuable to the education setting, period, point blank. Kids have to be healthy to be educated and educated to be healthy. Our kids stay safe and healthy, ready to learn, because school nurses are in our school buildings. Our school nurse funding every year is subject to be cut simply because of the formula. You heard Representative Stovall talk about the formula. Unfortunately, it's a formula that's not applicable or it's not appropriate for staffing school nurses in schools, because it means if the enrollment goes down and funding is then cut, there's only one nurse in every building. And typically in some buildings around the state, unfortunately, I'm sad to say, some school districts don't even have a nurse in every school, let alone a registered nurse in every school. So this funding is extremely critical every day in every school system, whether it's rural, metro, or whatever. Statistics show in our data that we collect in the state of Georgia on behalf of school nurses show that there's about a third of every population. In every population of a school, a third of the kids have some type of chronic medical issues. I can say that faithfully and truthfully for Fulton County. Out of our 93,000 kids, a third of them have some type of documented chronic illness, whether it's asthma, anaphylaxis, it can be as severe as brain tumors, whatever the case, sickle cell may be. But those are all kids that we take care of. We take that burden off of teachers, off of counselors, et cetera. The other thing that we wanted to share is that school nurses are what we consider the hidden healthcare system. For kids who don't have access to other healthcare or healthcare means, the very first place that they come is in the school clinic. And it doesn't matter if they're going through something from a counseling standpoint or medical. They show up in the clinic first. We're the ones that see the breadcrumbs that kids leave first. We identify, oh, this kid or this student might be in trouble. Then we refer them to our other supportive colleagues. And we love the relationship that we have with our colleagues, but our role is totally different. Just like now, it's coronavirus that's going on. We probably spent most of our day as lead nurses just trying to navigate and negotiate that on behalf of our school district. So it's a lot of things that school nurses do. We have t-shirts that say far more than Band-Aids nowadays. So we are far more than Band-Aids. And the significance of the chronic illnesses and things that we see in kids are unlike we've ever seen before. I've been in my position, this is my 20th year anniversary in Fulton County as the lead nurse of Fulton County. Prior to this, I was at the Assistant Vice President of Nursing at Grady. In my 20 years of being a school nurse, I've never seen the numbers that I'm seeing now of kids with chronic illnesses around this state. And I don't speak just for Fulton County, I'm speaking for school nurses across the state. So we humbly ask you to reconsider that funding. Our ask is even bigger than that. We really want the formula to be changed, so you don't have to see our bright faces every year. We'll come back as long as we need to, but again, we think that your time could be well spent in something else, and our time can be advocating on things like better pay for school nurses, et cetera, because we're never included in those talks about increasing salaries even for school nurses. Our salaries are 20, 30,000 less than what we could make if we work for outside of a school system.
Good evening, and I'm going to say deja vu because this is the same place that we were last year. We, I think, closed the committee meeting last year as a part of public comment. But I'm Melanie Bales. I am the nursing supervisor for Cobb County School District, the second largest public school district in the state of Georgia. We are fortunate that we do have a registered nurse in every single school in our school districts. I bring you greetings also on behalf of the Georgia Association of School Nurses. And our association represents not only public school nurses in our state, but also those school nurses who work in the private school sector as well as in the charter school system. So my colleague has so eloquently spoken, so I won't get on that soapbox again, but we do sincerely thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and to request that you reinstate the proposed cuts to the budget as it relates to school nurse funding in our state. School nurses are lifesavers, and I think that goes without saying. It happens every single day in every single system in our state, in every school in our state. And so the fact that the QBE formula is a result of decreasing attendance in our schools does not mitigate the fact that students have chronic illnesses that are very complex. And so our staff that we work collaboratively with can best be utilized in their professional capacity and to make sure that we have school nurses in place that are able to deal with those students and handle their health issues so that they are in their seats learning and our graduation rates continue to climb. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you both for being here. Thank you for your patience, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. I know this committee knows the importance of school nurses, and thank you for sharing that today.
Thank you.
Due to the late hour, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. I got a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Well, thank you very much. We will probably more than likely have meetings next week, so stay tuned.